Welcome back to her Fireside Stories. My dear friends, my daughter-in-law banned me from Mother's Day, so I canceled her mortgage. Sounds harsh, maybe, but after years of quiet sacrifices, after raising my son alone as a widow, and helping him build a life with a woman who slowly erased me, I finally had enough. This isn't just a revenge story. It's about betrayal wrapped in politeness about a mother discarded. Once she was no longer useful, Trinity called me not immediate family. But I was the one keeping their roof over their heads. When I stopped paying, I didn't just reclaim my dignity, I gave my son a chance to see the truth. I still remember the jolt of fury and disbelief the moment I opened Trinity's text. Mother's Day is only for immediate family this year. Marion, please understand. My heart pounded so loudly I thought the neighbors might hear it through the walls. Immediate family. After all these years, after all the money I'd poured into their lives, particularly the monthly mortgage payments that stretched my retirement fund thin, Trinity was informing me I wasn't immediate enough to be present on a day meant to honor motherhood. I stood there in the middle of my kitchen, my silver curls pinned back in a neat chignon, a style I'd grown fond of in my 60s, blinking at the phone as though it might suddenly reverse the appalling message. It's not as if I hadn't noticed Trinity growing more distant toward me with each passing season. In the beginning, she was polite, even respectful, always complimenting my cooking, asking for my advice on how to manage a home, and wearing her sleek, closely cropped undercut hairstyle with a sense of confidence that was nearly magnetic. My son Nicholas adored her bold, modern look. He'd once joked that she reminded him of a runway model from a cutting-edge fashion magazine. Still, I had taken her presence as a sign of my son's happiness, never imagining how badly things would turn out. I met Trinity 5 years ago, back when Nicholas had first introduced her at a family BBQ, since his father passed away. When Nicholas was young, I'd raised him alone, scraping by on a nurse's salary. I remember the shy boy with the short parted hair who used to help me with groceries and offer to mow old Mrs. Henderson's lawn next door. He grew into a considerate, intelligent man, landing a stable job in finance. When he said he'd found the one, my heart soared. Trinity was witty and urbane. She laughed at my jokes, devoured the potato salad I'd made, and even offered to help set up the backyard for the festivities. I was truly hopeful that my son had found a partner who would cherish him and, by extension, love our small family. But that text message had shattered whatever fragile illusions I'd been clinging to. Trinity had decided my presence on Mother's Day was somehow too much, though she and Nicholas apparently still needed my monthly check. My hand trembled as I set my phone on the countertop. This was about more than just a holiday. This was the culmination of years of subtle digs, orchestrated distances, and the creeping feeling that Trinity had been pushing me out of Nicholas's life from the moment she said I do. I tried to calm down by fixing myself a cup of chamomile tea, an old habit from my nursing days, but my heart raced faster with every sip replaying the text in my mind. Only for immediate family. Could Trinity truly be that oblivious to what those words signified? Or was she doing it on purpose? A knot formed in my stomach as I recalled the countless times I'd bailed the two of them out the surprise furnace repair that ate up $1,000 of my savings. The car insurance I'd co-signed because Trinity insisted on driving a fancy SUV. The property taxes they always seemed to forget. Over the past 3 years, I'd given them tens of thousands of dollars because, as Nicholas put it, they were really struggling to make ends meet. Yet, while they were so-called struggling, I kept noticing Trinity's social media posts, fancy dinners with handcrafted cocktails, weekend getaways to lake resorts, brand new living room furniture, and that flashy diamond tennis bracelet she claimed was a gift from Nicholas. At first, I resisted jumping to conclusions. Maybe they'd gotten a bonus at work. Maybe Trinity's side job paid well. Maybe a friend helped them out. I trusted my son to tell me if something was really amiss. But as the months turned into years, I grew suspicious that my support was less of a lifeline and more of a golden ticket for Trinity's never-ending demands. The irony was not lost on me. If Trinity had quietly allowed me to attend Mother's Day, I probably would have continued writing those checks, ignoring the red flags that rippled at the edges of my life. It was her brazen audacity, her absolute nerve to exclude me while still expecting my financial support, that at last woke me up. I realized with startling clarity that by continuing to give money, I was enabling a cycle that allowed Trinity to treat me as less than family. I remember sinking into my armchair that afternoon, the house silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. My gaze fell on a photograph of me and Nicholas taken on his graduation day. He was beaming, hugging me in a crisp blue cap and gown, his short hair neat and combed for the occasion. We'd fought so hard to get him there, me juggling double shifts, him studying tirelessly on scholarships. We were a team. And now that unbreakable bond felt frayed to the brink of snapping. No, I decided, setting my teacup down with a gentle click. Something had to change. If my daughter-in-law couldn't muster the decency to include me on Mother's Day of all days, then maybe I had to reevaluate my role in their marriage and in their finances. The next morning, I called the bank and canceled the automated mortgage payment that had been draining my checking account for 3 years. The customer service rep seemed baffled that I would willingly end such a long-standing arrangement. No, there's no issue with the bank itself, I explained. I'm just done paying for something that isn't my responsibility. My voice shook with a combination of dread and liberation. As soon as I hung up, I exhaled a long, trembling breath. I was about to send a powerful message, and I had no idea how Nicholas or Trinity would respond. True to form, the fallout began almost immediately. Around noon, while I was sweeping my front porch, my phone buzzed with an incoming call from Nicholas. My heart hammered as I picked up, preparing to respond calmly. He didn't even say hello. He launched right in, "Mom, the bank just informed me our mortgage payment bounced. Did something go wrong on your end?" The earnestness in his voice sliced me with guilt for a brief moment, but I stood firm. "It's not a mistake," I said, clearing my throat. "I canceled the check." "You did what?" There was a stunned silence before his voice rose. "Mom, we're depending on that money. You know, Trinity and I have been struggling, and this is the last thing we need right now." "Are you really struggling, Nicholas?" I asked, forcing my voice to remain steady. "Because I see all these fancy outings, all these new purchases. I see your wife's social media posts, and nothing about them screams, 'Struggle.'" He stumbled over his words, claiming those luxuries were one-offs or work-related, but I heard the doubt creeping into his tone. Trinity must have been right there, too, because I could hear her high-pitched accusations in the background. She was telling him what to say, probably, or at least influencing him with frenzied gestures. I could practically picture through the phone. Finally, I told him bluntly, "Son, if Trinity doesn't think I'm part of the immediate family for Mother's Day, then it's time I stop funding a family that doesn't include me." He ended the call abruptly, and I collapsed onto my porch swing, tears of anger and heartbreak wetting my lashes. It felt like I'd just cut a tether that connected me to Nicholas, a tether I'd nurtured for decades. But I also sensed a small, fierce seed of self-respect rooting itself in my chest, whispering that I was doing the right thing by not letting Trinity walk all over me. Of course, that was only the beginning of the tempest. Later that afternoon, Trinity texted me directly. "Real mature Marion," she wrote, "using money to manipulate us just shows why we needed a boundary." This Mother's Day, my jaw clenched reading her words. To label me as manipulative when I had always given freely was a twist of irony almost too big to swallow. I stared at the message, wondering if any response would even matter. In the end, I simply set my phone aside without replying, deciding that any engagement would only fan the flames. 2 hours later, while I was half-heartedly chopping carrots for dinner, my doorbell rang. I peered out the window to see Nicholas's car, and sure enough, both he and Trinity were marching up the walkway. Trinity's signature undercut was styled to perfection, not a single hair out of place, while Nicholas's short parted hair looked mussed from frustration. I braced myself and opened the door, noting how Trinity brushed past me into the living room, her designer handbag slung over her shoulder. "We need to talk," she declared as though this was her house. Nicholas, looking uncomfortable, gave a small nod. "I suppose we do," I replied, trying to keep my voice calm. My hands were still damp from washing vegetables, and I wiped them on a dish towel as I followed them into the living room. Trinity wasted no time. "First, you cancel the mortgage payment out of nowhere. Then you accuse us of not struggling. Is this your way of punishing us because you weren't invited to one holiday event?" I caught Nicholas's eyes. "You say one holiday event, but it's not the first time I've been excluded, is it?" My frustration built as I recounted smaller moments, birthdays, where my invitation showed up last-minute family dinners, where I was conveniently forgotten, or phone calls that never got returned. Honestly, I would have gone on paying that mortgage forever, ignoring these slights if you hadn't made it so blatant that you don't consider me immediate family on Mother's Day. Trinity's mouth fell open either in shock or scorn. I couldn't tell. Nicholas fidgeted, wiping his palms on his jeans. After a tense pause, Trinity doubled down, saying, "Maybe if you weren't so overbearing, we'd want you around." She pointed a manicured fingernail in my direction. "You come across as controlling, always commenting on our finances, our house, even my marriage to Nick." I took a steadying breath. If asking polite questions about your well-being is controlling, then perhaps you need to redefine your terms. Trinity's face was a thundercloud, but she pressed on, twisting my words to paint me as a busybody and an intruder. She declared that I had ulterior motives by helping them pay their mortgage, implying I was using that monthly check to keep Nicholas in my grasp. The accusation stung more than I'd like to admit. All those years I thought I was nurturing their future, not strangling it. To my surprise, Nicholas stepped forward, placing himself between us. His short, parted hair, now slightly damp with sweat, clung to his brow. "Mom, we appreciate everything you've done, but can't you see how your involvement is causing tension? Trinity feels judged, and it's not fair to her." His words cut, but I forced myself to remain composed. "Nicholas, I only ever wanted the best for you. The mortgage checks were given out of love, not some twisted need to control. But I won't finance a situation where I'm treated like an outsider, especially on Mother's Day." Trinity rolled her eyes. "So you decided to punish us by yanking financial support at the worst possible time. That's real loving, Marion." I pressed my lips together to stop from yelling. Anger radiated through me, but beneath it was heartbreak, heartbreak for the sweet boy who used to hold my hand in the grocery store, who used to say he'd always look after me once he was grown. Now that boy had become a man caught between his wife and his mother, and it was clear he felt cornered. "You've left us in a terrible spot," Nicholas said, exhaling heavily. "The bank wants their payment and we're short this month. Can you not just help us one more time while we sort things out?" I shook my head. "I can't keep enabling a relationship that doesn't respect me, Nicholas. I'm sorry." My voice shook with finality. For a fleeting moment, I thought I saw a flicker of understanding in his eyes. Maybe recognition that what Trinity and he were asking was wildly unfair. But then, as Trinity started railing again about how manipulative I was, that flicker died out. In the end, they left with a slam of the door, Trinity huffing that I'd regret this decision. Nicholas cast me one last look over his shoulder, filled with conflicted sadness. The emptiness he left behind settled into my living room like a dense fog. As the house fell silent, I found myself collapsing into my recliner, staring at the blank TV screen. "When did things go so wrong?" I whispered, though no one was there to answer. 2 days passed in excruciating quiet. I tried to keep busy reorganizing kitchen cabinets, taking walks around the block, tending to the roses I loved growing in my small backyard. My thoughts, however, kept drifting back to Nicholas's face during that confrontation. I hated that he looked so tired, so lost. I wondered if Trinity was filling his head with even more twisted tales of my so-called controlling behavior. A few extended family members texted me vaguely referencing social media drama. It seemed Trinity was publicly airing her grievances, painting me as a bitter mother-in-law who used money to manipulate her adult son's marriage. In one sense, the wave of guilt and worry was overwhelming. But in another, I felt the first fragile buds of clarity. I was done with that dynamic done, letting Trinity's manipulations dictate the terms of my relationship with Nicholas. If he truly wanted me in his life, he would find a way to see through her schemes. Just when I thought a storm might subside, my sister Carla called to warn me about a new Facebook post Trinity had shared. It was apparently a lengthy rant accusing me of sabotage, resentment, and humiliating them financially. I refused to read it. Something in my gut told me that giving attention to Trinity's online theatrics would only feed the beast. Still, Carla's distressed voice told me the damage might already be done. Mary and people in the family are choosing sides. I'm sorry, but you should know, a lot of them believe Trinity's version of events. Pain lanced my chest, but I thanked Carla, reminding her that no matter how vicious the rumors, I had to keep my dignity that night, unable to sleep. I scrolled through the photos from Nicholas's childhood, him with a chocolate-smeared face on his 5th birthday, him grinning with a missing front tooth, hugging me on the first day of elementary school. Tears blurred my vision. How had we arrived at such hostility? A part of me wondered if I should just give in, make that mortgage payment to keep the peace. But then I thought of Trinity's text, how it implied I was disposable, unnecessary, a mere convenience at best. I recalled all the times I'd felt an uneasy tug at my heart, suspecting that Trinity was deliberately nudging Nicholas away from me. I might have ignored it before, but never again. Enjoying the unfolding drama. Make sure you subscribe to stay updated on future stories and surprises I share. On the third morning after that confrontation, I woke to the sound of my doorbell. My first thought was that Nicholas or Trinity had come again, but when I opened the door, I found a tall, thin woman with a short auburn bob standing on my porch. She seemed nervous, her gaze flicking over my rose bushes and the old rocking chair by the door. "Yes?" I asked, clutching my robe around me. "Marion, my name is Alexis. I'm Trinity's half-sister." My eyebrows shot up in surprise. I'd met Alexis briefly at Nicholas and Trinity's wedding, though she'd seemed shy at the time. We'd never exchanged more than a few words. Unsure of what to expect, I invited her in. She hesitated at first, glancing around as if worried someone might see her enter. Once inside, she confessed she didn't have much time. "Trinity can't know I'm here," she said urgently. Over steaming mugs of coffee, Alexis told me a story that left me reeling. She described how Trinity had a pattern of manipulating family members, rewriting events, and subtly cutting off people who didn't do her bidding, often involving financial entanglements. Alexis cited examples with their stepfather, how Trinity had once accused him of controlling behavior just because he questioned her spending. According to Alexis, Trinity had succeeded in driving a wedge between him and their mother, ultimately causing him to move out. I started seeing the same pattern with Nicholas. Alexis admitted cupping the coffee mug with trembling hands. At first, I thought maybe Trinity had changed, but then she began dropping hints that you were always critical, that you didn't appreciate her. She posted these messages to friends saying you were easy to trick because you'd do anything for your son. I felt uneasy, but I said nothing. My stomach turned as she detailed how Trinity faked phone calls, telling Nicholas one version of a conversation while never actually dialing my number. She'd orchestrate misunderstandings, claiming I'd said terrible things. I think she's been collecting money from you, not because they truly needed it, but because she likes having you under her thumb. Alexis concluded, looking stricken. I'm sorry, Marion. I just can't let her tear up another family without warning someone. Hearing this validated all those alarm bells that had been going off in my mind for years. Trinity's manipulations weren't in my head. They were real and premeditated. Alexis, seeing my shock, offered a tentative hand. I wish I'd spoken up sooner, she said. But well, Trinity knows how to make life hell for anyone who crosses her. Once Alexis left, I sat there with my half-finished coffee, growing cold, my pulse racing. Everything that had felt intangible, the sneaking suspicion, the subtle slights, the constant push-pull dynamic, now had a concrete explanation. Trinity was orchestrating a campaign to keep me at arm's length while still milking my finances, and she was good at it enough that Nicholas, who normally saw through people's masks, seemed utterly blind to her manipulations. I reached for my phone and began combing through old texts, emails, and social media posts. Patterns jumped out at me like neon signs. There was that weekend they claimed to be too broke to afford groceries, only to post pictures from a winery tour days later. There were references to gatherings I never knew about. Trinity must have been telling Nicholas I had declined, thus making me look uninterested or aloof. The puzzle pieces fit together with devastating clarity. Despite this realization, I couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. Was I partly to blame for never calling out these inconsistencies sooner? Perhaps if I'd been more vigilant, more confrontational at the first sign of trouble, Nicholas wouldn't be so enmeshed in this toxic situation. Still, regret wouldn't solve anything now. I needed a plan. I decided that if Nicholas wanted answers, I'd show him exactly what Alexis had shown me, but I knew I had to be cautious. People under the influence of manipulation often lash out at the ones exposing the lie. Nicholas might not welcome the truth, especially if it meant admitting he'd been deceived by the woman he loved. That afternoon, I texted Nicholas and asked him to meet me alone. No, Trinity. His reply came swiftly. I don't think Trinity would like it if I didn't let him finish. I firmly insisted that if he wanted to salvage any piece of our relationship, he'd give me half an hour face to face to talk. Hesitantly, he agreed to come over the next day. Preparing for that meeting felt like preparing for a jury trial. I printed out screenshots both from Alexis and from Trinity's social media accounts, highlighting the times she'd ridiculed me or plotted how to keep the checks coming. I collected evidence of the mortgage payments, detailing every cent I'd paid. I planned what I'd say, how I'd present it, hoping my calm demeanor would show Nicholas that I wasn't acting out of pettiness, but out of genuine concern. When Nicholas arrived, he looked exhausted. His short parted hair disheveled and dark circles etched beneath his eyes. The sadness in his gaze tore at my heart. Despite my anger toward Trinity, I still loved my son more than anything in the world, and seeing him so worn down made me momentarily doubt my decision. But then I remembered Alexis's words, and I steeled myself. I'd spread all the evidence across the coffee table in my living room. "What's all this?" he asked as he stepped inside, eyeing the documents warily. "Proof?" I said, gesturing for him to sit. "Please, Nicholas, just hear me out." He sank onto the couch, exhaling slowly. "Mom, Trinity says you're trying to smear her. She claims you've always been envious of her bond with me, and that's why you canceled the mortgage payment to spite her." My stomach twisted. "You think I'm envious of your wife?" He shrugged helplessly. "I don't know what to think anymore. I just know she's adamant that you've exaggerated everything." I reached for the stack of screenshots. "Then let's let the facts speak for themselves." Over the next 20 minutes, I methodically walked him through the texts and posts. The ones Alexis had forwarded showed Trinity gloating about how easy it was to extract money from me, calling me a cash cow and mocking my old-fashioned hair and clothes. My silver curls, she apparently said, made me look like an expired actress from a 1950s film. I even found a direct message where she bragged, "As long as we keep sweet talking, Marion will never have to worry about the mortgage. She's good for at least another year." Nicholas's face paled. He flipped through the pages with trembling fingers. This can't be real. Trinity wouldn't." He fell silent as he read the chain of messages more carefully. Then he found screenshots of her conversations with a close friend about excluding me from Mother's Day for the sake of her mental health, claiming I was the one who made everyone uncomfortable. Another conversation told a friend that once the house was in a stable financial place, she planned to cut me off completely. No more forced pleasantries. No more phony invitations. Nicholas's breathing grew ragged, and I could sense the swirl of emotions inside him: shame, betrayal, anger, and denial. His eyes darted from the screenshots to the dates on the mortgage checks. "She told me these were last-minute emergencies, that you offered the money. She never said she specifically asked for more." I nodded, letting him process. "I did offer in the beginning. Nicholas, when you called saying you two were struggling right after your wedding, I said I'd be happy to help, but it snowballed. The requests became bigger, more frequent, and Trinity always seemed to have another reason why you two couldn't possibly make ends meet." He rubbed the back of his neck, something he did as a child when he was stressed. "I thought we were just in a tight spot. I never realized how much you were giving us." His eyes locked onto the line of checks I'd laid out, each one documented in my bank statements. The total amount was staggering. I saw him flinch as the evidence of Trinity's disrespect was laid bare. "Mom, why didn't you say something sooner?" Tears pricked my eyes. "Because I love you and I wanted to support you." I guess I kept hoping Trinity would come around and see me as part of the family. If I kept helping. I laughed bitterly, but she's only gotten bolder, apparently. Or maybe I just refused to see it until she shoved me out of Mother's Day. Nicholas groaned, leaning his head back against the sofa cushions. "I'm so sorry I feel like an idiot." I reached out and squeezed his hand. "You're not an idiot. Trinity is skilled at manipulation. She convinced you I was a thorn in her side, all while benefiting from my help. You wanted to believe the woman you love is honest. That's only natural." He closed his eyes, and for a moment neither of us spoke. The weight of the revelation sat heavily between us. Finally, he asked quietly, "What do I do now?" My heart cracked for him. There was no easy answer. "That's something you have to decide, but you can't ignore this anymore. If Trinity won't take responsibility for what she's done, if she continues to isolate you from your family, can you really build a healthy marriage on these lies?" Nicholas stayed with me for almost 2 hours that evening. We didn't just discuss Trinity's betrayals. We talked about the past, his childhood, my struggle as a single mom, the way he sometimes felt guilty for not being able to provide for me once he started working. That guilt, I realized, may have played into Trinity's manipulative tactics. If she told him I was interfering or controlling, he might distance himself out of a subconscious desire to assert independence, especially since he'd grown up seeing how hard I worked to keep our family afloat. I listened as he shared moments that in retrospect seemed like red flags. Trinity forgetting to invite me to a housewarming party, then claiming I'd turned down the invite. Trinity telling him I had made snide remarks about his career. Remarks Nicholas never actually heard, but believed Trinity had overheard Trinity scolding him for oversharing about their finances with me, yet insisting on my continued support. Nicholas admitted he'd been so in love and perhaps a little dazzled by her charismatic personality that he brushed off the nagging doubts. By the time he left, he was visibly shaken. "I have to confront her," he said, his jaw set with determination. "She needs to explain herself. And if she can't," he let the sentence trail off, but we both knew the implication. I walked him to the door, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Whatever happens, Nicholas, I'm here for you. You're my son, and I'll always love you." But I can't keep funding this marriage if Trinity keeps treating me like a nuisance. He gave me a tight hug, something he hadn't done in months, maybe years. Thank you, Mom, for everything. Then he drove away, leaving me alone with a mingled sense of hope and dread. Would Trinity twist the situation again? Find some cunning way to make Nicholas doubt me? Or was this the moment she'd finally been caught in her own snare? That night, I barely slept. Every creak in the house made me jump, my nerves frayed from imagining the storm that would erupt once Trinity learned Nicholas had discovered her true colors. Part of me felt triumphant, like at last justice might be served, but a larger part worried for Nicholas's emotional well-being. Confronting manipulative people can trigger explosive reactions, and Trinity had already proven she could be vindictive. The next afternoon, I got my answer. Nicholas called me from his car. Mom, he said, voice shaking, Trinity wants to come over. She says there's been a misunderstanding that she can explain everything. I took a measured breath. Does she know you've seen the evidence? He hesitated. I told her. I talked to you and saw some texts. She freaked out, claimed it's all out of context. She's on her way right now. I don't think I can do this alone. My maternal instincts roared to life, wanting to protect my son. Come here, Nicholas. We'll handle this together. Less than half an hour later, I heard a car screech to a halt outside my house. Through the front window, I watched Trinity emerge, her fashionable undercut, styled with laser precision face locked in a mask of fury. She didn't even knock, just shoved the door open and stormed into my living room. Nicholas followed a few steps behind, looking both angry and apologetic. Caught up in this roller coaster. Be sure to hit subscribe so you never miss the next gripping twist in my stories. There's always more ahead. Trinity's eyes zeroed in on the stack of documents on my coffee table. What is this? She demanded, pointing a perfectly manicured nail. What have you been telling Nicholas? I remained seated, my heart thudding like a drum. I've shown him the messages you wrote to your friends, the ones where you admit to using me for mortgage payments while pushing me out of the family. Her face paled, then she snapped back. Those are private conversations, taken completely out of context. Nicholas, baby, you know your mother has never liked me. She's twisting everything. Nicholas leveled a calm but somber look at her. Don't call me baby. And don't insult my mother. I read the words myself. Trinity, you called her a cash cow. You told your friends you couldn't wait to cut her off once the house was secure. How is that out of context? Trinity's eyes darted wildly between us like a cornered animal searching for escape. You can't be serious. You're going to believe these random screenshots over your own wife. Marion has always resented me. She's forging texts to break us up. My temper flared, but I forced it down. Why would I forge them? I have nothing to gain. It's your own sister, Alexis, who came to me, who exposed your history of doing this to other people. Check the timestamps. Trinity, the phone records the social media logs. It's all real. For a moment, Trinity looked genuinely stunned, as if the mention of Alexis had thrown her off. Then her eyes narrowed. Of course, Alexis is behind this. She's jealous because she's never had what I have. She's always been the black sheep. Nicholas crossed his arms. So now you're blaming your sister. This is a pattern, Trinity. It's not just about me or my mother. You did this with your stepdad too, didn't you? Trinity's chin jutted defiantly. He was a creep and deserved to be kicked out. You have no idea what that man put me through. I saw Nicholas's shoulders slump, as if realizing Trinity's typical tactic was to claim she was victimized, thereby justifying her actions. Trinity, we're not talking about your stepdad now. We're talking about us and how you've lied about my mother, repeatedly manipulated me into thinking she was the problem, when really you were the one driving the wedge. Her hands balled into fists. So you're really going to side with her over your wife, after all we've built together? Nicholas shook his head, voice trembling with pent-up frustration. You know, I was so sure Mom was controlling that she was the reason for all our stress. But it turns out she's been bending over backward to help us. You're the one who's controlling, Trinity. You controlled how I saw my own mother. The silence that followed was thick with anger and heartbreak. Trinity glared at me with a look so full of hatred, I nearly shrank back. Then she stormed up to Nicholas and grabbed his hand. Let's go, we're done here. She can't poison your mind if we leave. Nicholas gently pulled his hand away. You're not hearing me, Trinity. I'm not just leaving with you this time. I need answers, and you're not giving me any that makes sense. Instead, you're blaming everyone else. She stared at him in disbelief. You're choosing her over me. He ran a hand through his hair, eyes shining with tears. I'm choosing the truth, and it's pretty clear you can't handle that. Trinity's expression turned ice cold. She snatched up her handbag and hurled a parting shot. You'll regret this, both of you. Then she spun on her heel and slammed the door so hard the walls shuddered. For several seconds, neither Nicholas nor I moved. The weight of that dramatic exit settled around us like ash after a fire. When I finally glanced at my son, I saw tears brimming in his eyes. Without thinking, I crossed the room and held him, letting him bury his face against my shoulder. He was no longer the little boy I once rocked to sleep, but in that moment, it felt like he needed the same comfort. I'm sorry, he whispered, voice muffled. I'm so sorry I believed her lies. No, I said, rubbing his back. You loved her. You trusted her. That's not a crime. What matters now is where you go from here. He stepped back and wiped his cheeks. I don't know, I can't see a way to fix this with her. If she's been doing it all along, how could I ever trust her again? I nodded, painfully aware of the betrayal he must feel. There's no easy fix, Nicholas, but you have to decide if you want to give her a chance to change, if she's even willing to, or if this marriage has been built on a foundation of lies. He sank onto the couch, looking lost. She'll probably spread more rumors about you about me. I perched next to him. Let her. The people who matter will eventually see the truth. I can't keep living for what Trinity might say on social media, and neither should you. He laughed a hollow sound. That's easy for you to say. I'm the one who married her. I placed a hand on his knee. Yes, and you have decisions to make. But whatever you decide, you need to do it for you, not for me. If you want to try counseling, or if you want to leave her, that's your call. I'll respect it. He nodded, the turmoil in his eyes, not lessening but at least stabilizing into determination. I might stay with you for a few days. If that's okay, I can't go back to that house right now. And so, Nicholas moved into my spare bedroom that evening, bringing only a duffel bag of essentials. I watched him pace the hallway, phone in hand, as text after text rolled in from Trinity, some tearful pleas, some accusatory diatribes. Occasionally, I'd hear him answer quietly, telling her he needed space. The emotional whiplash weighed on him visibly. One moment he looked furious. The next moment he looked like a lost child. At night, I'd hear him rummaging in the kitchen for a glass of water, sighing so heavily it hurt me to listen. I wanted to take away his pain, but I knew this was his burden to carry, at least for now. All I could do was provide a safe haven. Meanwhile, Trinity's wrath found new outlets. She posted a lengthy rant on Facebook about how I'd isolated Nicholas from her, labeling me a toxic mother-in-law who meddled in their marriage to a dangerous degree. She claimed I was the one controlling Nicholas and that he was a victim of my overbearing nature. The gall of it made my blood boil, but I refused to engage Carla. My sister texted me screenshots of the vile statements Trinity wrote. I politely asked Carla to stop sending them. The negativity was more than I could take. Nicholas contemplated speaking out publicly, but I advised caution. Responding on social media will only feed the fire. I said, the truth will come out in time. Alexis, too, got dragged into the drama with Trinity calling her a traitor who betrayed family loyalty. Alexis forwarded me a snippet of a text from Trinity that said, "You'll regret ever crossing me," which felt more like a threat than a message from a scorned sister. Still in the midst of that chaos, I saw glimpses of the Nicholas. I remembered the compassionate boy who wanted to stand up for the underdog, the thoughtful man who tried to see both sides of a conflict. He made an appointment with a therapist, wanting professional help to untangle his emotions and figure out why he'd missed so many red flags. I admired him for that humility. One evening, over a quiet dinner of homemade soup and bread, he said, "Mom, I'm not going to ask you to finance me anymore. I realize now how wrong it was to rely on you so heavily. I have to learn to stand on my own." I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "I appreciate that, son. I truly do. But remember, if you ever need a small boost or a place to stay, I'm here. That doesn't change." The legal side of things escalated quickly. Trinity contacted an attorney claiming emotional distress and hinting at a lawsuit. She even alleged that my cancellation of the mortgage payment was a form of contract interference. It sounded absurd, but Nicholas's expression darkened when he read the letter from her lawyer. "She's going to drag this out," he said, voice shaking with anger. "She can't sue you for stopping payments you were never obligated to make in the first place." But Trinity was crafty, and we both knew she'd try any angle to keep her narrative alive. Nicholas consulted his own attorney, who calmly explained that if the marriage was irreparably broken, it might be best to file for legal separation or divorce sooner rather than later to protect both of us from further false claims. I was surprised when Nicholas announced he was ready to take that step. Part of me expected him to waver, to hold on to hope that Trinity might suddenly admit her wrongdoing and change her behavior. But the stream of vitriol and manipulative text she sent left him no illusions. Still the day Nicholas actually filed for separation was one of the saddest days of my life. Though I detested the way Trinity had treated me, I'd never wanted my son to suffer through a broken marriage. I'd lost my husband early in Nicholas's life, and the idea of him losing his own spouse, no matter how toxic she'd become, opened old wounds. But I kept my sorrow hidden, supporting Nicholas in his decision. A few days after the filing, Trinity emptied their joint bank account, leaving Nicholas with barely enough to pay for groceries and basic expenses. In the evenings, he'd slump in the armchair staring at his phone with a blank expression. "I never thought she could be this spiteful," he said, a slight tremble in his voice. God, how could I have been so blind? I tried to console him, reminding him that manipulative people often become desperate when exposed, lashing out in extreme ways to regain control. "This isn't your fault, Nicholas. She fooled me too to an extent, but now we know the truth." Over the next few weeks, we navigated a maze of legal documents and emotional upheaval. Nicholas spent long hours with his lawyer drafting statements detailing the ways Trinity had misused joint funds. Carla helped by collecting testimony from extended family members who had seen Trinity behave suspiciously at gatherings. Alexis bravely offered to speak out about Trinity's previous manipulations, providing text logs that matched the pattern in Nicholas's case. In the meantime, I tried to keep life as normal as possible at home. I'd rise early to water the roses and trim their blossoms, a ritual that always brought me peace. I'd cook breakfast for Nicholas before he left for work, a small gesture that seemed to ground him. I tried not to pry about every legal detail, but he confided in me more often now, openly discussing his fears. One night, he admitted he worried he'd never trust anyone again, that he might be too emotionally scarred to move forward. "You will," I assured him, stirring sugar into my tea. "It'll take time and maybe therapy, but you'll trust again when you're ready. Just promise me you'll trust yourself first. Don't ignore your instincts like you did with Trinity." His eyes flicked with acknowledgement. "I won't," he said softly, as though making a solemn vow. Outside my personal bubble, Trinity continued her smear campaign. I received calls from distant relatives inquiring why I'd turned on my daughter-in-law. They relayed Trinity's stories of how I was jealous of her closeness with Nicholas, how I'd always made snide remarks about her. Some tried to remain neutral, but the drama was too salacious for them to ignore. I kept my responses civil. If you want the truth, come talk to Nicholas or me directly. I told them I won't argue on social media or air personal matters there. Despite the mounting pressure, I found myself oddly at peace with my decision to cut off the mortgage checks. Something in me felt free for the first time in years, free from the constant anxiety of whether I'd be included or excluded from family events, free from the compulsion to keep the financial lifeline going just to secure a place in Nicholas's life. It was as though by stepping back from my role as the provider, I finally stepped into my role as a mother who deserved respect, not one who had to buy it. Then, unexpectedly, a silver lining appeared. One afternoon, Nicholas came home waving his phone with a mix of excitement and relief. "You're not going to believe this," he said. Melissa, one of Trinity's longtime friends, reached out to me. Apparently, Melissa had grown uncomfortable watching Trinity defame me and Nicholas online. She decided to share screenshots of conversations that painted an even darker picture. Trinity had told Melissa in explicit detail how she'd manipulated Nicholas from day one, admitting that she'd married him, partly because she saw how devoted I was, and she believed I'd be an endless source of financial support. She also expressed zero remorse in those chats, mocking Nicholas for being too soft and me for being desperate for a daughter. Nicholas sat at my kitchen table stunned. I knew it was bad. "Mom, but this level of cold-blooded planning, his voice shook. "It's like I married a stranger." He sent those new screenshots to his attorney, who welcomed them as crucial evidence. With Alexis's testimony and Melissa's data, Trinity's claims grew weaker. The tide was turning in our favor. My heart went out to Melissa, too. She had apparently realized how toxic Trinity was, how she used people's loyalty until they were no longer beneficial. It was a pattern one Trinity repeated over and over, leaving behind broken relationships and chaos. If you've been riveted by this story so far, don't forget to subscribe. You won't want to miss the final showdown and the surprising twists that emerge from all this turmoil. A few more weeks passed and the tension gradually lifted. Trinity's lawsuits and threats hit dead ends because her own words implicated her in financial manipulation. Nicholas's lawyer arranged for a settlement that allowed them to sell the house, the very house I'd been paying for all this time, and split the equity in a way that recognized Nicholas's greater contributions. Trinity fought tooth and nail, demanding spousal support, but the judge was unsympathetic given the evidence of fraud and malicious intent. In a final dramatic twist, Trinity disappeared from town shortly after the settlement. Rumors swirled that she'd moved to another state, possibly with a new wealthy businessman, as her benefactor Nicholas received a brief text from her claiming she needed a fresh start, but she left no forwarding address. Oddly enough, I felt no glee, no triumphant satisfaction, only relief that her hold over my son was broken. A year later, on a sunny spring morning, I found myself potting fresh geraniums on my porch. The scent of damp soil reminded me of new beginnings, something that felt profoundly apt. After such a turbulent year, life had finally settled into a calmer rhythm. Nicholas arrived just as I was wiping dirt off my hands, sporting a fresh haircut that no longer bore the same anxious disarray I remembered from the tumultuous days. He walked up with a small gift bag in one hand and a bouquet of white lilies in the other. "Happy Mother's Day," he said softly, extending the flowers to me. My throat tightened. After all that heartbreak, all the drama, hearing those words, Mother's Day, brought tears to my eyes. I invited him in and we sat at the kitchen table, the sun illuminating the once quiet room that had witnessed so many of my tears. He handed me the gift bag. Inside was a framed photo of the two of us at his college graduation, A time before Trinity had turned our lives upside down. I found it while packing up the last of my things. He explained, his voice warm. Thought you might want to have it. I set the frame on the table, tracing the photo's edge. We were both grinning in that snapshot, Nicholas in his bright blue cap and gown, me looking exhausted but proud with my silver curls pinned back. It was the last truly unguarded picture we had together, taken years before Trinity came along. The gesture said more than words could. Over lunch, we talked about the future. Nicholas had been diligently saving for a new home, one he could afford without my assistance. He said the process was cathartic. Each dollar saved was proof he could stand on his own 2 feet. He'd been in therapy for months, learning to spot manipulative behaviors and to set boundaries. He'd even started dating again cautiously, exploring connections while ensuring he never repeated the same mistakes. Sipping on iced tea, Nicholas asked Mom, "Do you regret tearing up that mortgage check, knowing now how everything turned out?" I looked at him, remembering the turmoil, the heartbreak, the social media warfare, and the nights I cried myself to sleep. Then I smiled gently. I don't regret it at all. It was the catalyst we needed to break free from that toxic cycle. He nodded thoughtfully, eyes flicking to the framed photo on the table. A year ago, I thought my marriage was everything. I was so scared to lose Trinity that I'd have done anything to keep her happy, even if it meant pushing you away. His voice caught. Sometimes I feel like a fool. Mom? I shook my head, reaching over to squeeze his hand. You were never a fool. You were human. Nicholas and love can blind us. I think we both learned that letting someone take advantage of us is not the same as loving them. He breathed a shaky sigh. It's just I keep replaying all the lies she told me. I feel like I should have caught on sooner. Part of me wonders if I subconsciously ignored the signs because it was easier to believe her than to deal with the truth. That's exactly how manipulation works, I said, leaning back in my chair. I ignored signs too. Rationalized her behavior because I wanted to keep the peace. We're both coming out of this wiser. Nicholas produced a set of papers, spreading them across the table. I'm going to sign the final documents for the sale of our old house. Once that's done, it's truly over. No more link to Trinity. No more monthly mortgage that you were paying half the time. I'm ready to move on. I studied his profile as he said those words. He looked resolute, a man reclaiming his life. Tears blurred my vision again. I'm proud of you, Nicholas. This isn't easy, but you're doing the right thing. He gave a bittersweet smile. I'm trying. That evening, after he left, I took a moment to reflect on how far we'd come. The day Trinity told me I wasn't immediate family had sparked a chain of events none of us could have foreseen. Yet in burning that bridge, tearing up the mortgage check, I'd also built a pathway for Nicholas and me to find each other again. Yes, we'd lost the illusions of a happy marriage, but we'd gained a renewed, more authentic mother-son relationship. Summer arrived with a flourish of bright sunshine, and Nicholas invited me to see the new condo he'd purchased. It was modest but cozy, with lots of windows and a small patio. As I stepped inside, I marveled at how much it felt like his space. No fancy furniture he couldn't afford, no pretense of a lifestyle he was barely clinging to, just honest living. Welcome to my humble abode, he joked, brushing his short hair aside. You helped make this possible, you know. I frowned in confusion. I didn't give you any money. We agreed no more financial support. He shook his head with a smile. I don't mean literally. I mean you showed me that I can make it on my own, that I don't have to rely on someone else's generosity or let them rely on mine in a toxic way. It was a sweet moment, interrupted only by a single piece of lingering drama. Trinity had posted one last bitter screed online, accusing me of ruining her marriage and stealing Nicholas for myself. Her final rant included wild claims that I'd faked the screenshots and bribed Alexis to back my lies. By then, most people knew better having seen actual evidence of Trinity's duplicity. Even if some folks bought into her narrative, I no longer cared. Nicholas gave me a quick tour, a small living room with a secondhand couch, a tidy kitchen with just enough space for him to experiment with cooking. We stepped out onto the patio where he planned to grow a few potted herbs. I want you to come over for dinner sometimes, but I promise I won't guilt trip you into cooking for me, he teased. Looking at him, I felt a bloom of pride. I'd like that, I said softly. Maybe we can rotate who cooks each time. He gazed around, inhaling the fresh air. Mom, for the first time in ages. I feel light, like I'm living authentically. Without Trinity's constant demands and manipulations, I'm rediscovering who I am. I reached out and patted his arm. That's the best outcome we could hope for. Months rolled by, and we settled into a comfortable routine. Nicholas would visit me once a week for dinner, or I'd drop by his condo with a new recipe to try. On Sundays, we often took walks together, exchanging stories about our work weeks. Mine spent in quiet retirement projects. His in a finance job that was increasingly stable now that he wasn't hemorrhaging money to Trinity's whims. And as the leaves began to turn gold and red, we broached a topic we hadn't dared discuss in depth. Forgiveness, not necessarily forgiveness of Trinity's actions, but the idea that Nicholas needed to forgive himself for what he deemed stupidity. She fooled me so completely, he said one Sunday as we strolled along a park path covered in crunchy leaves. I still beat myself up that I couldn't see what she was doing. I paused, leaning against the trunk of a large oak. Honey, if people only ever dated or married saints, no one would learn any lessons. You saw good qualities in her. She's charming, she's bold, she knows how to perform affection. You wanted to believe she was genuine. He let out a long breath that formed a wisp in the crisp air. My therapist says letting go of self-blame is key to real healing. So I'm trying, but it's hard. Sometimes I think about all the times I lashed out at you defending Trinity. I could tell you were hurting, but I dismissed your feelings. Tears pricked my eyes. We can't change the past, Nicholas. But we can learn. I forgive you wholeheartedly. You were trying to protect your wife. You had no idea she was the one causing the harm. A shy smile tugged at his lips. Thanks, Mom. Slowly over the following weeks, I saw him loosen his grip on that guilt. He started making new friends, exploring new hobbies, and even took up volunteering at an animal shelter. He still had rough days triggered by memories of Trinity's manipulations or nightmares about the legal battles. But each challenge he faced with more resilience. As for me, I learned to stand up for myself in ways I never had before. If a friend or relative tried to guilt me into something, I found the courage to say no. If I caught a whiff of manipulation, I steered clear. Nicholas's ordeal taught me I could no longer remain silent out of fear of conflict. I had a right to my boundaries. By late winter, I realized how drastically our lives had changed in just over a year. Nicholas was truly on his own 2 feet, and I felt a deeper connection with him than I'd had in ages. Our relationship was built on mutual respect and open communication, rather than hush-hush financial arrangements that masked underlying resentments. One chilly afternoon, I was flipping through an old photo album minding my own business when the phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. When I answered, a hesitant voice introduced herself as the fiancé of Trinity's new beau. My pulse raced, bracing for more drama. But to my surprise, she said she'd discovered my number from some shared acquaintances and wanted to verify certain allegations Trinity had made about me and Nicholas. She says you're a vindictive mother-in-law who destroyed her marriage, the woman explained, sounding uneasy. She claims your son is a violent man who terrorized her. I guess after hearing so many contradictory stories, I wanted to reach out directly. It was a surreal call, but I calmly recounted what had truly happened, mentioning the evidence used in court. I told her that Trinity had a history of manipulation, that she'd been known to drain finances while isolating her partner. The woman listened quietly, occasionally gasping in realization. I had a weird feeling about her. She admitted she keeps pushing me to sign certain financial agreements. I felt a pang of sympathy for this stranger. I can't tell you what to do, I said softly, but be careful. Trust your instincts. Trinity can be very convincing. I learned that the hard way. We ended the call cordially, and I whispered a silent prayer that the new fiancé would see Trinity's true colors sooner rather than later. I told Nicholas about it later, and he grimaced. It's like a pattern she'll never break, he said. I just hope that woman listens to you. Though it reopened old wounds, it also reaffirmed that stepping away, tearing up that mortgage check, was the best thing I could have done. Trinity's manipulative cycle was beyond my power to fix, but I'd at least freed my son from it. Spring came again, bringing a surge of fresh blossoms to my garden. Exactly 1 year and some weeks after Trinity's fateful text told me I wasn't welcome for Mother's Day, Nicholas showed up on my doorstep with an invitation in hand. His short parted hair had grown a bit, and he wore a casual smile that spoke of genuine happiness. Hey, Mom, he said, offering me a simple card adorned with a picture of daisies. This is for a real Mother's Day celebration. If you'll come. Reading it, I felt my heart swell. The invite was for a cozy brunch at a local cafe. Just me, Nicholas and Carla. No big family drama. No forced interactions. Just an intimate celebration of motherhood and the bond we'd fought so hard to preserve. Tears welled in my eyes as I enveloped my son in a hug. I'd love to, I whispered. Mother's Day arrived bright and warm. I dressed in a floral blouse I'd treated myself to, pinned my silver curls in a loose bun, and made my way to the cafe, where Nicholas and Carla were waiting with wide smiles. Over eggs Benedict and fresh squeezed orange juice, we laughed, reminisced about the old days, and gently touched on the tumultuous events of the previous year. There was no bitterness, only a collective sense of relief that we'd all survived the storm and emerged stronger. Near the end of brunch, Nicholas leaned forward, clearing his throat. I just want to toast to you, Mom, for all the sacrifices you made raising me alone, for all the times you believed in me, and yes, for having the guts to stop paying a mortgage that wasn't yours. That single act, though painful, saved us from a lifetime of manipulation. My cheeks warmed at the applause from Carla and a few nearby patrons who overheard raising my own glass. I said, here's to Nicholas for finding the courage to walk away from toxicity and rediscover who he truly is, and to Carla for always having my back, even when the family drama went public. We clinked glasses, and for the first time in years, I felt unburdened. Trinity's memory no longer loomed over us like a dark cloud. She was simply a cautionary tale, a reminder of why it's so important to stand up for yourself and set boundaries with those who disrespect you. Thank you for sharing in my journey. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe for more real-life stories and eye-opening experiences. There's always something new to learn about love, family, and finding our own worth. As the afternoon sun lit the cafe in a golden glow, I realized that every tear, every frantic phone call, every heartbreak had led us to this moment of peace. In choosing myself by saying no more to Trinity's demands, I'd given Nicholas the chance to break free, and I'd given both of us the gift of an authentic, loving relationship, one that would only grow stronger with time. Our little Mother's Day brunch might not have been flashy or crowded, but it was the most meaningful celebration I'd had in years. And that to me was the surprise Trinity never saw coming. She might have banned me from her contrived version of Mother's Day, but in doing so, she unknowingly set the stage for a renewal of the bond between my son and me. A bond forged in honesty, mutual respect, and finally genuine love. Thank you for joining me here at her Fireside Stories. Marion's brave journey through family conflict teaches us an unforgettable lesson about boundaries, courage, and self worth. Sometimes the hardest decisions bring the greatest freedom. Now it's your turn. How do you feel about Marion's decision to stop financially supporting her greedy daughter in law? Would you have handled the situation differently? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your opinions always matter to me. If you enjoyed today's story, please hit the subscribe button and ring that notification bell so you never miss another emotional and empowering tale. Remember, each story we share brings us closer together, gathered warmly around our virtual fireside. Until next time, take good care and I'll see you soon, right here at Her Fireside Stories.